My name is Mthembu. I'm a senior lecturer from the School of Applied Human Sciences, the discipline of social work. Before joining academia, I was a practitioner for more than 10 years, and later on I continued with my studies, and then I joined the university. I've been employed by the UKZN for the last 10 years. In my role, I have been teaching undergrad students, postgrad, and I have supervised more than 15 postgrad students, including PhDs. One of the things that I love about mentoring is that I do believe that inkonzo isemathuleni. What I mean by that is that the future is in the hands of the youth. And if we do not, or if I do not invest in personal as well as professional development of my students as future social work practitioners, as well as future academics, then what do we have then for the future? And I think I owe my students that, because many people invested in my development, even when I was a social work practitioner, up until today. And I owe it to myself, and I owe it to this great country to be there for my students and help them in their own professional development. I also understand many challenges that students encounter, both at undergrad and postgrad, and I do not want to create a space where their development will be hampered because there are no mentors or because there are no opportunities for them to be the best people that they can be. There are many different ways that I use for mentoring. Sometimes I meet with my students on a one-to-one basis. Sometimes I use groups. It depends on the context. But I think for me, there are few things that are important. Number one, I need to build a relationship with my students. I need to know them. For me, rapport is critical, but rapport must be based on professional principles and as well as also mutual respect and also a sense of ubuntu. I think for me that is important. My students need to know that I see them and that we have a relationship that is also based on mutual trust, because I understand also that many students, particularly those that I encounter, and I think part of this comes from the fact that students choose social work because of the things that they have seen in their lives or even in their communities, and deep down they want to make a difference. So some of them come to the university already with a history of trauma, and that's sort of my starting point, using a trauma-informed approach to say, I don't know where my students come from, but I need to make sure that the environment is conducive for them. I need to make sure that in my encounter with them, I don't perpetuate trauma. So that's my starting point, to say I want my students to know that I'm accessible and I'm approachable and I'm a human being as much as they are also a human being. So for me, that's the starting point. And before we can even talk about all the other things that I have to do in terms of helping them professionally. But also for me, being a mentor is about creating opportunities for personal growth, and as well as a professional development and also academic development. I lead a number of projects within the university. Most of them are internationalization projects. The big one is the one that is funded by DAT. I had the first project for 4 years, the first DAT project that was also focusing on building social work competencies through internationalization. That was from 2017 to about 2020, 2021. Through that project, my students were involved in academic exchange programs to Germany for 2 weeks, sometimes to a month, and also using digital technology. They will engage with other students, and also we had even other activities where we host as Germans. We're coming to UKZN and also interacting with students. So for me, opening those opportunities is very key, and I use a lot of my students even in those encounters. I'm now funded for the next 4 years up until 2026, again with Germany, and again my students are key. The focus mostly is on, again, student exchange, opening those doors, and I think those opportunities are very rare in social work for students to have them, and I'm happy to lead those processes and make sure that I nurture those international relations to make sure that my students continue to benefit and grow. The other project that I lead is funded by the US. It's an R21 study that is focusing on trauma-informed approach and healing-centered practices in HIV cure research using ACI. It's a clinical research project, but it also has a social-behavioral component. And in that project, again, it's a team that consists of the US team as well as the South African team, which is mainly made of clinicians, and also myself as a social-behavioral scientist. And in that project, 2 of my students are full-time involved. We are writing papers together, collecting data, doing the analysis, and for me, I allow them to lead some of the processes, and they represent me in highly esteemed meetings, even me without being there. And for me to give them that space to grow and also to open up opportunities for them to be mentored by others who are skilled differently or who have expertise that I do not have. And I think for me that is quite key. And now, even in that project, I've also included my undergrad students who are now doing work in the research site and providing counseling and doing a lot of other social work interventions for the participants that are involved in HIV cure trial. So we are really spearheading, we are contributing to a specialization in public health, but from the angle of social work. So for me, I think that is key to see my students also leading in that space and doing a lot of work that connects social work as well as clinical settings. So my area of interest is child protection, and that is my passion. I teach that in undergrad and postgrad, and most of my postgraduate students are also doing work around child protection, different areas that speaks to or that relate to children. So I'm also very much invested in community engagement and ensuring that also my students are part and parcel of that. I had big projects around child protection that relates to the development of tools, child-centered tools that can be used when one is counseling a child. And to develop those tools, I was not alone. I called my students. It was a funded project again by DAD. One was a very big initiative that was funded as a response to COVID-19, and I'm very happy to say that the book that was widely acclaimed and that was widely reported even provincially and within the university, Uhambo Lwam ngesikhathi se-COVID, which is a Zulu storybook about a children's journey, a child's journey in particular, Mthembu, during COVID-19. And then we had an animation that followed that, and then we also had another book, Ibhengele Lesithembiso. And in all those projects, my students were on the forefront, and their names are also included in those books, as well as the information about the storybook. So they now have expertise even in that area of developing a book, because it was something that we were doing it for the first time, and we were learning. We didn't know that it was going to take off the way it did, and there was such a demand for the book and the second book and so on. So now I see them as people who are also in part authors, because they are contributing to the development of tools that are now widely used by organizations. I mean, we have received even funding to have some of these books distributed for free, and organizations that work with children are receiving these books for free, and people who are contributing towards these books, they do that because they see a value and they know that it comes from the place of love great expertise, and so on. I can't say that I'm the best in mentoring. I have my fair share of weaknesses. I tend to nurture maturity and independence, and I treasure that because it's hard for me to sort of follow up on students who are not doing the work that they are supposed to do, or who display limited accountability and a sense of responsibility. And I'm yet to find the best way and approach of doing that, because students are not the same. And as much as I can understand, because maybe they have academic challenges, but I do expect some level of commitment and a level of maturity, and it's not always possible to find that level of commitment. So I'm yet to learn that, to also nurture that level of independence. It can really be hard. I have so many projects, and I have so many other things that I do around community engagement, as well as also teaching here and internationally. And also, again, in those spaces, I try to bring my students. So sometimes I don't have enough time to really spend with students, especially on an individual basis, as I used to in the past. So to try and divide myself sometimes is hard. But I understand that I have a lot to learn in terms of mentorship. I can't say that I've got it all, but it's a skill that one needs to develop on a continuous basis. But I was mentored by a very great woman, two women actually, maybe even more. But one was my PhD supervisor. I did my PhD in the UK under the supervision of Professor Adele Jones. I was coming from South Africa with a history of Bantu education. And when I started, I was doing my MPhil. I was coming straight from honors social work that I had completed probably more than 10 years before starting my MPhil. So I was not really prepared academically to be in that environment. But I think that one of the most important things that she did first, before even focusing on my academic progress, was to build my confidence and make sure that I felt and I was treated as if I'm the same like any other student that had masters from Oxford or from these other universities, those that she was supervising. So she made a conscious effort to nurture me first as an individual, and to make sure that that I know that whatever I had was enough, and that I was valuable, and that I had a lot to contribute. And she was an amazing listener, amazing listener. I always say to my students, when I was with my supervisor, it felt like I was the only one that mattered to her at that particular time, and whatever that I was saying made sense. And she would even say to me, Maud, I wish you can record yourself. What you are saying is amazing. Now we just have to make sure that we write that down exactly as we are saying it. So, those little encouragements. And then we moved to the academic parts. I had many ideas, I had big ideas, and she embraced all of them. But at the same time, she helped me narrow myself down and really develop myself as an academic. So I come from that background of being nurtured at the personal as well as an academic level. And she knew me, she knew everything about me. So for me to connect with her was quite easy. And I think I carried that with me up until now. And while I was here, then I was also mentored by Professor Tanusha Raniga, who is now at the University of Johannesburg. She opened opportunities for me to get involved in multiple research projects, co-writing with her, and again, even my first DAD project was through her, and then we continued from there. But it's been an amazing, and again, I'm friends with Professor Raniga. We attend conferences. She invites me, now that she is a Sachi chair, to Johannesburg, and she continues to open more and more opportunities. So when you've been given so much, you also owe it to yourself and others to be even more giving, because you feel really you have been privileged in so many different ways. And I think for me that is what drives me and that gives me energy and power every day to say, what can I do more? How can I help? And how can I continue to support and nurture, and also just push students a little bit more, move them from their comfort zone.
Greatness for our students. One student at a time. One student at a time.
One student at a time.
One student at a time.
One student at a time.
One student at a time.